Kaylee Mitchell, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I have to ask you, I know the nature of your work is you travel all the time. Where are you talking to me
Yeah.
from right now?
I'm currently on my bed in Eugene.
Eugene. We were talking about
Yep.
this before recording. Your hot take is you actually really like Eugene, and you grew up in Oregon, went
hmm
to college in Oregon. You're an Oregon girl at heart. Where does Oregon, I feel like it's a sleeper state. It rarely gets talked about, best states in America. What's your take on Oregon? Where does it
Yeah,
rank up?
I agree. For a while, like at the end of college, I kind of thought that I was gonna want to get out of Oregon, and if I was gonna join a pro team, like go somewhere else. And I ended up spending a little bit more time in some other states, and I really missed how green Oregon is. And yeah, and there's so many like flowers and there's so much like fruit that grows around like in the summertime. Some of my favorite runs are at the end of summer and the beginning of fall when there's just like random like fruit trees everywhere. And like every run, I'll come back from the run with just like handfuls of pear or figs or like whatever it is. So I don't know. I don't know where else in the world, or at least in the United States, is like that. But I feel like many people don't know that about Oregon.
I think something that makes it unique is the proximity of mountains and ocean. I feel like you guys
Yes.
in Washington have that, but not too many other
hmm
places. California, kind of, but I feel like it's further away.
Yeah, I think that that is like a benefit of Oregon and Washington. I've actually lived in Seattle as well. And in both spots, it's like, you have the city, you have the beach, you have the mountains. And so for like each season you get to do all the fun sports, so you have the skiing and the snowboarding in the winter and the beach and the hikes in the summer and yeah, it's like close to a lot of stuff.
I know you're someone through preparing for this podcast that's very open about struggles. I wouldn't necessarily call this a struggle, but in preparing for this episode, I was thinking I don't think I've asked too many guests this question, so I want to open this up for
Ooh.
discussion here. We originally set a date to record this episode, and then you got sick, and you were actually planning
Yeah.
on running the Paris Diamond League, I think, which is like obviously
hmm
a massive opportunity, a very great opportunity
yeah.
to run fast and to race against some of the best in a fantastic city. I'm sure. Never been to France, but looks awesome. Then you get sick, you don't end up going. Like, how does a professional runner yourself handle the setback of sickness? How do you deal with it?
hmm
I think a lot of people are curious of like, should I
yeah.
run through it? What's Kaylee Mitchell's expert
Yeah.
opinion on sickness?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that one of my like superpowers as a runner is my ability to take care of myself, whether that's when I'm sick or like a little beat up or something. So yeah, I was bummed to not get to go over there, but I try to look at the glass half full and, just feeling sorry for myself isn't really gonna make anything better. So I was just really happy that I didn't get sick like that before trials because that was, my main focus of the year and everything else just kind of a bonus. But for 3 days, I just slept. Like, that is my best friend when I'm sick. Lots of sleeping, lots of hydrating. You still have to make sure, even if you don't feel like it, definitely getting food in. Like, you still need to eat. Your body needs energy in order to help, fight off this sickness that you're going through. And then I always wait until I can tell that running again isn't going to make my sickness worse and I'm still going to be able to like continue to get better. So I felt that on day 4. And so I just ran for like 30 minutes. I kind of just go in with the mindset of like, I don't know how far I'm going to run right now and it's probably not going to feel very good. So I'm going to stay close to my house. And if I run for 20 minutes, I run for 20 minutes. If I run for 40 minutes, I run for 40 minutes. And I don't know, I really value having what I call a two-way relationship between you and your body. So your body takes care of you all the time, helps you do some super amazing things. And so when your body is undergoing a sickness or an injury or whatever it is, it's like your turn to reciprocate that and take really good care of it. You can't, you wouldn't want to have a one-way relationship with like a friend or a partner or anything. So it's the same between you and your body.
What would you say to a listener if you're listening to a running podcast and you're listening to this episode? Like, the listeners of The Running Effect are very intent, very serious, and so I'm sure they
Uh-huh.
struggle with some things I struggled with in high school, which was like have a
Yeah.
fever, 90 degrees out. I still need to get my miles in. Like, I think there's just such a mindset of type A individuals who get into the sport that they
Yeah.
feel the need to constantly put in the work. You are at the pinnacle of the sport. And so if you're taking days off to recover from sickness, like, everyone should be doing that. But why do you think people
Yeah.
struggle to flip off the switch? And what would be some advice to someone listening, maybe undergoing sickness, to like
Yeah.
take a calm breath? You're not going to lose it all in 3 days. And if you
Yeah.
continue to push through it, it'll actually get worse and
Mhm.
you'll have to take more time off.
Yeah. I kind of think of it like I think of there as being like two sides to you. There's the like mental emotional side and there's the physical side. And sometimes like you have to pick which one you're going to cater to. And so we'll take sickness for an example. So when you're sick, it's probably not a great idea to like push through it, especially if you have like a fever, if you feel really bad. Better to rest. So, you know, that is an example of when you would want to focus on taking care of the physical side of yourself because focusing on that is what's going to end up making you a better runner in the long run. With that being said, it's going to be a little bit tougher on the mental emotional side in that moment. So, I kind of just accept that and know that I'm doing a good job and being smart. And, sometimes you need to work smarter, not harder. Um, and so maybe instead of going for a run, I'll put on my running shoes, put on my running clothes, and just go for just like a little walk. And it may not be, the exact same as going for a full run, but you still are just touching on that mental emotional side while honoring like the physical side of things. So I think it's really important to balance those. And it's really easy to latch on to the emotional train of thought. It's a lot stronger because there's feelings attached to it. When that's an example of when you'd really want to focus on like the logical train of thought, which is I am sick. I'm going to honor my body. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to show love to my body. And when my body's better, then we're going to work together to like get back to training. Yeah, I just never let like insecurity make my training choices for me, if that makes sense.
That's such a good line. I never make my insecurity make training. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's a quote right
I'm
there.
glad
That's a
you
quote
like
right there. I
it.
think something a lot of people struggle with, whether it's sickness or probably injuries are more prevalent than sickness. We get, well, I'd be curious to see the stats. Maybe
Yeah.
similar. It depends on the runner. But generally throughout the year, you'll either get sick or some sort of hiccup. When you
Yeah.
take that time off and then you transition back into the work, a lot of times it's mentally hard for people to switch back on because it's like training really hard, boom, get hit with something, a few days off
Yeah.
or whatever it might be, and then boom,
Hmm.
back to it. A lot of times there's a gradual rebuild, but I think for a lot of people and myself over the years, it can be difficult to like get back locked in, all of that. How do you
Yeah.
refocus yourself when you come back from something?
Yeah, that's another good question. I don't get sick that often, to be honest, and I'm not a super injury prone person. But, since I'm just coming off of this sickness and it did take quite a few days, I worked out for the first time on Saturday, and that was 13 days since I last worked out. Um, I just kind of knew that running was going to feel hard and I was just going to be okay with it. And I felt like I could still gain, I'm still gaining stuff physically by going and running, but I'm also gaining more mentally in that time because I'm doing something hard. And I just would continue to remind myself, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And it's just, sometimes you do really hard workouts and that's what your hard thing is. And, for me, that the last few days had been just normal runs. Like 4 miles felt hard for me. And instead of getting upset that I was only running 4 miles and that I was running slower and it didn't feel as good, I tried to look at it as, hey, I got to run today. Yesterday, I didn't get to run. And so as long as I'm like making progress, I tried to focus on the progress of it and not get like greedy with it, as opposed to just getting really pessimistic. So like ran 4 days or 4 miles the first day. The next day, I ran 4 miles in the morning and 4 miles in the evening. And I was like really happy. I was able to run twice. Um, and so each day just a little bit better.
I think something that like sickness or injury reminds me of, but I think other people as well, is like the gift that running is. And I think a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
when we're in the thick of training and actually things are going well, we get into this mindset of always wanting more. Maybe the races aren't going as well and
Yeah.
you're like constantly thinking more, that you forget the
Mm-hmm.
incredible act that running is itself until it gets taken away from you.
Right.
Have you experienced
Mm-hmm.
that through this injury or any other, or not injury, sickness,
Yeah.
sickness or previous injury? Just like the resetting that a setback does for you in terms of like appreciating how even just the simple act of running, not even the
Yeah.
pace or mileage, just the act of putting one foot
Mm-hmm.
in front of the other.
Oh, totally. I love running so much. I actually wrote this little like letter poem thing. I do a lot of like writing. I'll write letters to myself. I write on the back of my race bibs, yada, yada, yada. But I wrote this whole like letter to running. And I'm basically telling running, like, thank you for being my best friend, my therapist. And I can't even remember what the third thing was right now. But something along those lines, because I feel like I just feel the most like myself while I'm doing it. And, I just, when things do feel difficult and hard, sometimes I even just pretend like, hey, I'm just a recreational runner. Like, I'd be going to do this whether I was running professionally or not. And I'm just really happy I get to go spend time with myself and do the thing that I like love the most. So I definitely don't take my runs for granted, and I'm always excited to do another one, even if it doesn't feel very good. And I do feel lucky that I feel that way towards running and that I don't ever really see it as like a chore. I just think it's, I just think it's amazing.
What advice would you give to someone listening right now who is kind of stuck in that rut where they don't appreciate running like they used to, but they're, maybe top three on their team or one of the top runners in the NCAA and they feel an obligation to keep running and keep pushing? What would be some things you'd tell them?
I would just encourage them to like do what makes them happiest. I just feel like life is way too short not to spend it happy. And, maybe they're feeling that way because they are taking it a bit too serious and they're not doing things that them as just like the person loves to do. And I think it's really easy for runners to get lost in our identity as just a runner. But sometimes it's really helpful to take a step back and be like, you know what, like, what do I like to do just like as a person? That has nothing to do with running. Like, go spend time with your friends or your family or go to the movies or I don't know. Just focus on doing some things that just make you happy. And um, I mean, you can't force like love for something. And I don't know, also maybe like talk to a teammate, talk to someone close, talk to your coach. If you have that type of relationship, I think it's really helpful to get like your thoughts and feelings out and not just bottle them up. So that would probably be my suggestion.
Talking about the U.S. Olympic trials, which is almost a month removed now, you placed fifth in the final.
Yeah.
So close, 2 spots off making the team. But I feel like it's a really
Yeah.
cool like opportunity to talk to you a month removed because I feel like it's,
Hmm.
you've probably reflected on it a bunch, but also
Yeah.
moved on enough. What
Hmm.
are the reflections and takeaways maybe from journaling as a writer
Yeah.
from this race?
You know, I'm like obviously bummed I didn't make the team, but at the same time, I'm proud of myself. And I'm not normally proud of myself. Like if there's like if I do 9 things right, 9 out of 10 things right, and one thing like not as good or whatever, I tend to focus on that one thing. So it's been something I've worked on is being more optimistic about my performances. But I transitioned to run at Bowerman pretty quickly because I knew that putting myself in this environment was gonna be part of giving myself the best shot at making that team. And I knew I was going to have to improve quite a bit to even, have a shot at making it. And I was going to have to do everything just about perfectly for the months leading up to it, in order to run like in the 19s. And my goal was to just get to that starting line and know that I did everything I possibly could to give myself the best shot at making the team and not let my mind hold me back in the race. And I feel like I did all of those things. And I don't think that there's anything else I could have done, to run 9:05 on that day. And I'm not there yet. And that doesn't mean that I won't be, but just right now, I'm just not quite there. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely bittersweet is a good word to use.
Going into this U.S. Olympic trials for the women's steeple, I think it was an interesting conversation where you look at the past 10 years and the two ladies who have just absolutely
Yeah.
dominated the event aren't in it. And so I think it's a conversation of like, oh, wow, it's wide open, maybe an off year. But then a month removed, it's like that was maybe the most impressive U.S. Championship 3K steeple of all time. What was it like to be a part
Yeah.
of it and also run 9:14 and place fifth, which would have been unthinkable 5 years ago?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's amazing, I feel like I've been in several like historically fast races like throughout the NCAA and now, at like the US trials. And so it's been really cool to be a part of those races. Obviously I really want to make teams and it's like, oh my gosh, any other year I could have like made the team, potentially, but something that I really want to like gain from doing this professionally is like I want to see how fast I can run too. And I think it's cool that, if it only took 9:29 to make the team, then maybe I'd only ever run 9:29. But now it takes 9:03 to make the team. So it's just like, okay, well, now I'm just going to have to run 9:02. Like, I think you get the best of both worlds. You get to make teams and actually see like how fast you get to run. And I think that's pretty cool to be a part of.
Are you optimistic all the way, like through the line that you, or like the last 100 meters that you can make the team? Or is there a point in that race where your brain starts to go negative and you're like, not the day for me? And if that's the case, how do you continue to put forward your best effort and maybe place fifth
Yeah.
instead of 10th?
Yeah. In that race, I wasn't, with 600 to go, there was definitely a gap, but I was kind of optimistic of like just keep pushing because you never know what's going to happen in that last 600 meters. You never know who's a few seconds away from like breaking or whatnot. So this race, I actually did a really good job of being optimistic. Other races, I have struggled with the mental side of running and tend to like get down on myself or hard on myself. And so that's something that I've really been working on, the last few years. And instead of, I try to work on being my biggest cheerleader during the race, and focusing on not like evaluating in the middle of the race, but like complete the task, like get the most out of yourself. And so I'm still kind of figuring that part out.
Going back a race before that, the prelim, you won your prelim, and I was in the stadium, and it was just kind of like I think I zoned out the last 50 meters, and then I saw your name come up on the board, and I'm like, what happened there? What goes on in the prelims where it's like the people who make it, it seems unanimously don't really care about who wins it, which makes for a
Yeah.
hysterical last 20 meters every single time. What was going through your mind the last 100 meters, and what goes into something like that?
I didn't even know that like I had come in first until I was taught in like the media mixed zone afterwards, and they were like, "Oh, so how'd you feel about winning your heat?" I was like, "Wait, what?" Like I won the heat. I was not trying to do that. I was just trying. I started to get nervous because we were like slowing down quite a bit, and I knew that there were other women like coming in hot behind us. And I'm like, okay, like we just need to get across the line. Like I'll feel better if we just like get across. So I just didn't want something crazy to happen, and We were all just like right there. So I didn't know that I ended up first. That wasn't my intention. But it is, you know, I don't like prelims. I just feel like there's so much more thinking involved. And I hate thinking during races. Um, and so I always just get so much more nervous for prelims and finals. And it's weird.
How physical does the steeple get compared to other events? Are elbows thrown over the water jumps, or is it generally pretty calm and collected? I feel like you get spiked more. It seems bunched up all the time, or
It
no?
can get bunched. I think it just, depends on the race. I've been in some steeples where it's like pretty packed and it is a little bit difficult to jump over, especially like the dry barriers, at least in my opinion. And it can get kind of chaotic in the water. But I don't know. I feel like lately the mid distance races have been the more like aggressive ones, the ones where you see more people like falling on each other. I think in the steeple, people more fall over the barriers as opposed to each other. So luckily, I haven't really experienced too much like jostling, I feel like.
Kaylee, let's go way back in time to young Kaylee. Take me through how you got your start in the sport of running and how you made
Yeah.
it this far. What were your first impressions of the sport?
So I tried cross country for the first time my sophomore year of high school, and I absolutely hated it. I thought it was the worst sport ever. I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like, this is terrible. It sucked. I ran like the 400 and the 800 in high school. Like, the 800 was my favorite event. I loved that. You would not catch me doing the distance events in track. But then I moved schools for junior and senior year because so my dad's in the military and we moved around. So I decided to just do cross country just to make friends, and I ended up really liking it just because I actually had like good friends on the team and they made it fun. And um, then I wasn't sure that I wanted to run in college. It really stressed me out because I put a lot of my self worth into my performance. But do you know Ahmed Mohammed runs for Hokan Elite now?
Yes, nicest guy ever.
So sweet. So he was actually my first friend when I moved to Salem my
Really?
junior year of high school because he went to West Salem. And he would take me on these like long, slow runs. And like I'm talking like 8 to 10 miles. And I thought that was so long. And one day we went on one and I talked to him about like if I should run in college or not because I wasn't sure. And he convinced me to go to try. And so I've thanked him profusely multiple times because, if he hadn't convinced me, maybe I wouldn't be sitting here today. Um, yeah, I ended up wasn't super heavily recruited out of college or out of high school. I ended up running at a Division II school in Seattle for a little over a year. And then, yeah, transferred to OSU and just kept getting better.
A bunch of questions off of that. First one is something you just said at the end there. Transferred to OSU as someone who lives in Columbus. A little offended
Oregon
there.
State.
No, I got it. But like, what? How many? Like in Oregon, I'm assuming OSU is unanimously accepted as Oregon State. But then, like, when I lived in Austin, Texas, OSU was Oklahoma State. But in
Yeah.
in Ohio, it's 100% Ohio State.
Yeah.
Have you run that issue as well, or no? Not too
Not
much.
really, because I don't really,
I was so confused.
in
I was
the
like, "You went to what? You went to Ohio State?"
no, I'm so used to saying it because in the Pacific Northwest, it's like you just assume Oregon State. And I totally forget, and it's funny because like Oklahoma State has the same colors as Oregon State, which is so, so funny. And I'm actually pretty good friends with several of the girls on that team too. So I always am like, I'm like their honorary other OSU team member.
Another thing you shared in your response there, your dad is a part of the military. I'm curious, growing up, was he in the military all throughout growing up, or was it later into your
Yeah.
childhood? Okay,
Yep.
all
He
throughout growing up.
actually, yeah, he just retired on June 30th, actually.
Wow.
Over 30 years in the military.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing. Shout out, Mr.
yeah.
Mitchell, if you're listening. Thank you for your
Yeah.
service. That's amazing. That's incredible. So something I want to ask you is like, when you think of military, you think of like, maybe not rough, but like rougher, disciplined. They have
Yeah.
to run in training. What was it like growing up? Did you have to wake up at like 5 a.m. to do your push-ups, or was it like very easy going? Like that's your thing,
No,
Dad.
my dad's a goofball. He's a huge goofball, but he also, in elementary school was teaching me to deadlift in the garage, and he uh, convinced me or he bribed me and said, so we had this big play structure in our backyard, and it had monkey bars, and it had 6 monkey bars on it. And I was in first or second grade. And he told me that if I could do a pull up on each monkey bar down and back, so 12 pull
Wow.
ups in a row, that he would buy me a Webkins. And I went out in the backyard every day and I practiced and I did it and I got that Webkins.
Wow. Do you still have it? Is it at the parents' home?
I actually don't. I wish that I did, but I don't have it anymore. I don't even remember what the Webkins, which one I picked out, to be honest. I was really little.
They say don't bribe kids, but I feel like from that example, I think there are good bribes like that. You
I
probably
think
learned
so
valuable lessons
too.
along the way.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think about that now and I'm like, what the heck? I don't know if I could go do that right now.
So going back in time, in high school, you're kind of unsure if you want to run to the next level or not. But you talked about how you placed a lot of your worth in your performances. And I think
Hmm.
that's something a lot of people struggle with, but aren't very vocal about to teammates or other
Yeah.
people. How did you get out of that mindset? What were some things you did
Hmm.
to be in a healthier state with the sport?
Hmm. It took me until I think my junior year at Oregon State to finally get out of that mindset. And it took me to like, I went on a walk one day. I like to walk to just kind of like clear my head. And on this walk, I decided, you know what? If I can't find a way to not just put all of my self worth into my performances, I'm going to walk away from competitive running because my happiness as a person is not worth a sport. And it took me until that point in order to kind of like snap out of it. And, I'm not like free from it. I still will feel it sometimes. And I think it's like natural to experience some of that. But I don't view it as like, oh, I didn't PR, so I don't deserve X, Y, and Z anymore, you know? And something that I've used to kind of like help me when I do have like a bad race or something's not going well is I take a piece of paper and on one side, I write just like every negative thought I'm thinking. There's no rules to it. I can write the same sentence as many times as I want. Doesn't have to make sense. Just I'm getting everything that I'm thinking out onto the front side of this paper. And then I flip over the paper and I write my truths. And I write what I know is true and what I know is real and factual. And that is what I like walk away with. And so instead of being down on myself for 2 weeks about like a bad race or something, I process it, go through it, and then walk away with the logical side of things, and try to focus on that truths side of the paper. So I feel like that has been the most helpful for me in working on, knowing what's real and what is just like a feeling because something I tell myself are feelings are valid, but feelings are not facts. So like anything that you're feeling, like you feel that way. Like you can't like invalidate your feelings, but that doesn't mean that those feelings are true.
I'm going to spin this a little bit because one of my first reactions was like thinking of asking a question about like speaking directly to a listener who is
Hmm.
struggling with putting their self-worth in their performances. But then thinking back to my own career, I think something that annoyed me, and so it's less of a question, more of elaborating on a thought, and I'm curious
Yeah.
to get your take on it, is I feel like it didn't help when the people in my life, all they asked about was my running. And I think it's a very natural place for your loved ones and teammates and people to be like, how's training going? How's today's workout? When's your next race? How'd your race go? And it's just all about running. And I think that really encourages like Kaylee Mitchell, the runner. Kaylee Mitchell's only the
Yes.
runner. Could you maybe speak to like, the people listening of the positive influence they can be to their teammates or other
Yes.
runners they know of, like literally by just like changing the questions you ask, how that can change someone's frame with the sport?
Totally. I'm so glad you brought this up because that was another piece in me figuring out how to like not put my self-worth into it. Um, I know people come at it with like the best intentions and they're not meaning to do like any harm with it. It's just something that they know that you like to do that they're trying to, connect with you about. But what they don't realize is like the next 50 people that you talk to that day are asking the same thing, and that's the first thing that anyone talks to you about. And so when it happens over and over and over again, it's almost subconsciously teaching you that that's why people talk to you, or it makes you feel that way. And so something that I started doing is if somebody just asked me, "Hey Kaylee, how are you?" I would say, "Thank you so much for asking me how I am, just like as a person." And I would literally started thanking people for that and just being a little bit more like vocal about how it made me feel. And people around me started to like realize, like, hey, like, she doesn't just want me to come up and bring up the latest performance every time I see her. It's, you know, athletes are people too. Don't forget that we just happen to be able to do one thing really well. But if you took that away, it's like just normal people. So I think, if, even if you don't realize it and you're trying to go about it with the best intentions, um, maybe just, I don't know, check in and see how the person is doing first and just have a normal conversation. And if it feels like they're in a good headspace and they want to talk about it, maybe bring it up, or maybe just let them bring it up. I don't know.
You mentioned that run you went on with, say his name for me. I always
Ahmed?
forget. Yeah. Ahmed
Yeah.
Muhammad, right? Yeah.
Muhammad? Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. It sounds so cool back to back with the first name
I
and last name.
know.
I love it. Okay, so you mentioned that run that one day and how he kind of convinced you to explore running in college. You ultimately went to a D2 school, and then from there you went on to run for Oregon State, where you were unbelievably successful. Can you take me through that jump from like betting on yourself to even run in college at all, to then going from D2 to the massive jump to D1, and not just doing that, but excelling really, really well?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. I've felt a lot of imposter syndrome um, in my running journey, but something that, like a theme I've noticed throughout my life. So, starting in high school, I started in a 4A school and put myself in that pond and figured out how to get to the top of that pond. Then moved schools and went to a 6A school, figured out how to get to the top of that pond. Then went to college and went to the Division 2 level and figured out how to get to the top of that pond. And so I just kept seeing myself, if I was able to put myself in bigger like ponds, I call it. It was super uncomfortable, but with like the right support system and the right people, I feel like I've been able to figure out how to like get to the top of it. And so I've always just kind of had that in the back of my mind, that even when, I'm at the bottom when I start, I think of it almost as like a game, and like, how good can I be? How good can I get? How much can I improve? How long can I hang on to this teammate? How long can I, just making it fun. And um, so it's been challenging and come with especially its mental challenges, but I feel like that's just helped me grow as like a person and a runner all in one. I don't know if that fully answers the question or not, but that was just what came to my head.
No, you're good. I love it. Good thoughts there. So you were a 10-time All-American while at Oregon State. I talked to so many accomplished runners, and I think only once or twice has it gotten above 10 All-Americans. But I feel like you weren't like crazy talked about in college. Maybe a little bit towards the final
Mm.
few months when you were doing some big things, but quite frankly, I was like, wow, she was 10-time All-American. Like, how did I not know that? So can you take me through kind of like flying under the radar and being good under the radar? Did you like that, or did you want some like Parker Valby recognition type thing?
No, I really do this like for myself, and like I don't need to be on the cover of everything, and I don't need to be the most talked about athlete because I do it for me. Like, when I'm old one day, I'm not going to think about how many times I was on the front page of all these Instagram posts. I'm going to think about the accomplishments that I achieved. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, like there were times where I felt like, oh, is there like nothing I'm gonna be able to do that's ever gonna be like good enough, like that people would think that I was also good or also capable of doing X, Y, and Z. And, maybe that has subconsciously contributed to some of the like imposter syndrome that I've like experienced before. But, I'm not an NCAA champion. I'm not an NCAA record holder. The highest I've ever placed at NCAAs is sixth. Um, so it's not like I also get it. I hadn't earned that like talking time, I guess. And, I know that I feel a lot of potential in myself, and I'm excited to keep getting better. But yeah, I don't do it for the kudos.
That's a sneaky way to put in some running terminology there. I like it. Going back to those years at Oregon State, is there a most like memorable race? One of those 10. What's the most memorable All-American?
I would say the DMR that we ran at indoors in 2022. We had just thrown together this DMR team like the last weekend of qualifying for NCAAs, and we ran a qualifying time, and we were so excited, and then ended up placing fourth um, in the DMR at NCAAs like a week later. And it was just so fun to be a part of like a relay group, and be with my teammates and have it be like our thing that we accomplished together and did together and didn't like expect it to happen. And so yeah, we were just all super stoked about it. So definitely that one.
You mentioned to me a minute ago how your highest place ever at an NCAA meet was sixth, I think, individually.
Yeah.
If you look at your
Yeah.
performances at the U.S. Championships, last year you placed sixth, this year fifth. I know the NCAA is stacked, but USA is another level. What do you think has contributed to taking this next step and doing it at even a higher level?
Yeah, I think, just being on this Bowerman team has really changed things for me. Um, I love Jerry's training. Like, we do a lot of hard workouts. I get confidence from doing really hard workouts and having to doubt myself during those workouts and hang out in what I call my dark place. Um, and then being surrounded by like teammates with the same sort of goals as me and the same sort of like expectations. I'm surrounded by American record holders and Olympians and like all these super accomplished athletes. And I want to contribute to that like expectation on the team. And then having, Christina and Carissa to work out with. I want to get my butt kicked in workouts by my teammates. I want to have to learn how to figure out how to keep up with them. Um, so all of it has just been like a really good like switch up for me. And I feel just like really fit. I've never felt so fit in my life before. And altitude, doing an altitude camp, that was also like really impactful for me. And I absolutely loved that. And I felt like I gained a lot of fitness and like mental strength from it too.
You seem like, not to seem, I can tell you are like a super thoughtful person. And I
Oh,
know that
thank
just
you.
from anyone who writes in 2024 is a thoughtful person. So I'm sure you've thought about some of these things. And I don't think I've asked this question in, man, months. And it has to be a specific type of guest for me to ask the question, but I think you'd come up with a thoughtful response. And it's also kind of unique because you're in this kind of like rookie year. So it's funny, I
Yeah.
would even ask you about the end of your career because you have such a long and successful one ahead of you. But looking towards the end, when you one day, whenever that is, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, hang up the spikes, hang up the road racing shoes, whatever they are, maybe trail racing shoes. Who knows? Who knows where your career will take you? What do you want Kaylee Mitchell's legacy to be? Like when people hear the name Kaylee Mitchell, what do you want them to think of?
I want them, well, hopefully, if it's someone I know, I would like them to remember more so like the way I made them feel. And hopefully that would be like happy and like I'd make them laugh or something. So hopefully there'd be good feelings with it. Um, but I think I'd want people to remember me as like, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And it may not look exactly the way that you originally envisioned, and it's probably not going to go exactly the way that you want it to. But I truly believe, and I feel like I've shown that if you like truly put your mind to something, like you can do anything. Um, like I wasn't this star high school athlete. I wasn't, you know, didn't wasn't super good even my freshman, sophomore year of college, and I was just determined to get better. And um, I just feel like I don't know. I'm still in shock that I'm even like a professional runner right now, and that this is my life. Like I would have never even been able to like dream of doing this. Um, so I guess that would be my answer. But also to, you know, not take the sport too terribly seriously. Like, don't sacrifice your happiness as a person. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that.
I feel like that's a beautiful place to end this conversation. There's so many
Yeah.
more questions I could ask you, but I feel like that's a poetic way to close things out. Really appreciate your time. One final question for you. The question I ask every single guest on every single episode. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you choose to make for him?
Hmm. I want, I kind of want to like make him something like bad so that he yells. So it would be kind of funny. So maybe I'd like purposely burn my chicken and like I don't know, make some just like the most plain thing ever just to like get a reaction or something.
That's a first of a kind response. Most people are scared of the hate. You're embracing it.
I feel like I would just laugh.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's amazing. Well,
Yeah, so
Kaylee,
Gordon, if you're listening, don't come over to my house. You're not gonna be happy.
he feels added after this conversation. He's like, I'm on
Yeah,
Kaylee's hit list. I'm not going to anywhere
right?
near Eugene anytime soon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, Kaylee, really appreciate the conversation. Sincerely, thank you for your openness to discussing so many things. And I feel like this episode was so packed with advice and wisdom from your many years of success in the sport of running. Keep crushing it. I'm excited to see it every year as you get better. Sixth, fifth. Hopefully, you can jump 2 spots next year, not fourth. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Keep crushing it. I'm cheering you on.
Ah, thank you.